I am a member of SouthWest Writers. I am on the board. I was thinking this morning before this conference about, well, when was actually the first time I self-published? And it occurred to me that the first time was actually when I was 27 years old and working as an assistant to the dean for the Jordan College of Fine Arts at Butler University. They had a dance department, which, you know, Jordan's a small college. Most people don't even know they have a dance department, and yet among the dancing community, the ballet specifically, they are extremely well known. They have an award they put out every year, the Margaret Sear Rosenblith Award, named for a ballerina who had died in an auto accident, and her husband, who was a very famous conductor at the time, Eric Rosenblith, he sponsored then a person to have a scholarship to the ballet program for the next few years. So about 25 years after this had started, they wanted to do a memorial booklet for it, and they put me in charge of gathering all the material. I contacted all of the ballerinas and danseurs that had won the awards over the years, some of which had gone on to become quite famous. Prima ballerina for the Het Nationale in Amsterdam, and they had dancers for the Boston Ballet. Some had formed their own companies, one in Atlanta, I remember. It's been a while. And I got pictures of them in their dancing poses and their bios, brought them all together, and of course in those days we didn't have computers. So I had to type it all up, make it pretty, beautiful, perfect, put it in, send it to the editor, and turn around and then send it out to get published and printed. And it came back beautiful. It was only 80 pages long. It's nothing you would go to a major publisher for, but Eric Rosenblith loved it, and it was a wonderful memorial to his legacy at the university. So that was really the first time that I had ever put together a book. It just occurred to me that it's been so long ago. We're talking like 1980. Okay. So I see several people here who already have books that have been self-published, and actually I think a couple of you had, several of you have gone through other publishers. I got some questions for you. How many already do have published books, either self-published or others? Okay, good, good. How many of you are just in the process of thinking of writing a book that you would someday like to publish? Okay, got a few of them too. Good. Hey, I'm guilty on all counts. I'm still thinking of ones I want to do in the future. How many are halfway through one and are looking at options? Yeah? Okay, I'm there too. Okay, so how many here have attempted to interest an agent or a publisher in your book and have been rejected? And the reasons they give you, they're always nice about it, most of the time anyway. And some of them have stated for a reason that I'm going to be speaking to you today. The cookbook that Rob told you about was rejected because it's a niche market, So not because it was a bad book, but it just didn't appeal to what the publishers want. So this morning I'm going to go over the pros and cons of self-publishing. We're going to examine some of your motivations to make this decision, some of the basics that are involved should you go to take on the challenge. So my first question for you is, why do you want to write a book? Now I didn't say publish, I said why are you wanting to write the book to begin with? Go ahead. I can't see what she's showing you, so I have to kind of look here. Do you have a story that's locked inside of you, just dying to get out? Do you have knowledge of a specific topic that you think would be really helpful to people, or that people have actually asked you, I would really like to know more about that? You want to make money? I'm retiring soon, that'll be a nice extra income, hopefully. Are you wanting the acclaim of being an author, a published author? Are you just writing a memoir, one that's just for family and friends? Some people like that. They just want to have something, and I'll talk about some of those too. You had a really great life, and there are people that have died now, your parents or grandparents, that you may have known better than anybody else, and you want their legacy to live on. Or maybe you don't know, you just kind of want to. There's something inside of you that's aching to write a book. These are all very good reasons. They're not necessarily all the same reasons for having a book published. So we're going to kind of go over first the traditional publishing. What would happen if you went that route? And we're going to come back to those questions later on.
Now, I was thinking about something as Rosemary was talking. I'm moving around, Kim, I'm sorry. Okay. I was thinking about something as Rosemary was talking. Each one of us here, you will discover, is coming to writing from a different path. And it's really important to be aware of that because each one of us is going to have experiences that are different from everyone else. So if anybody in this today, or at your table, or in your future tells you they know all there is to know about self-publishing or publishing, run away. That's all I want to say. It really is important to understand that. So my goal today is to share with you the experiences I've had. I don't profess to be an expert on any of this, or especially on all of it, but I want to share what I've done. I also want to tell you a little bit about myself and how I came to this path, because I think that's part of my story. I'm an engineer. I'm not trained as a writer. I'm trained as an engineer. I'm working as an engineer. And in fact, where did Rosemary go? Where is she? Oh, I'll tell her when she gets back. Sorry. I'm working nowadays in sustainability, so I thought that was interesting that that's her passion. I don't have the formal training as a writer, but I always love to read. So I came to this from that path. I also came to this because as an engineer, I followed directions really well, and somebody told me to write a book. And that's how I started on this path. It's really odd to think about. I started writing novel-length fiction in 1997 in November over Thanksgiving break. I still remember this because I couldn't believe I was doing it. And ended up with my first book coming out in December of 2000. I have lucked into a lot of stuff. And so what I really want to give you as my slogan for today is be informed. What else did I? Oh, be informed and be realistic, but be bold. Because that's how you're going to get forward in the writing world. You really have to go put yourself out there. Toughest thing I can remember is handing my manuscript over to somebody to read the first time that wasn't a relative. Even the relatives were a little tough, but non-relatives. So I want to talk about that a little bit. Another thing that I think is important to mention here is that things are changing daily in this world. Now, I spoke at SouthWest Writers about, 6 or 7 years ago, maybe even longer, as a guest. I wasn't a member yet. And somebody asked me what I thought about self-publishing, and I said I would never do that. And at the time, that was true. I would never have self-published. It was a new concept coming out, new old concept coming back. And I would not have done it because it wasn't well respected, and it wasn't easy, and it was expensive. The difference now is that it's easy, and it can be free. We're going to talk about that. And it does have a level of respect, but you also do have to remember one of the things Rosemary said that I thought was really key. You can put out crappy stuff, and a lot of people do. So be aware that because you're self-publishing, when people are aware that your book is self-published, there will be that seed of doubt. Is this going to be any good? Prove them wrong. Make your book fantastic and prove them wrong. Be bold. I do have about 20 books out, a number of anthologies and shorter stories and novellas. I have ebooks, traditionally published paperbacks, hardbacks, audiobooks. I've done a little bit of everything. So I have experience with a lot of different media. Not tons of experience, but I'll share with you what I have. And then the other thing I want to say, I don't want you to misunderstand what I'm representing here, because I'm telling you some good information for self-publishing, but I am not going to tell you that traditional publishing is not the way to go. Because if you can traditionally publish, if you have a book that's suitable for traditional publication, go for that first. You'll sell a lot more books than most people will sell self-publishing. If you're one of the lucky ones, you'll sell a ton self-publishing, but you really do have to be one of the lucky, persistent, hardworking authors to do that. It won't happen without your participation. So go the traditional publishing route. It took me 3 years to publish a first book. By that time I had 12 written by the time I had published the first one. And it took me 10 more years to get an agent. That was harder than getting published. So it's not a simple thing. If you really want to make a career out of this, go that extra mile. But if what you've decided now, so I'm saying what next? I'm assuming you've decided to self-publish. Everybody here decided to self-publish after Rosemarie's talk? All right. Okay, we're going to go for that. So that's where we're going to start. So we're going to talk a little bit about the self-publishing route. I'm ready. I thought first we better start with a diagram because I'm an engineer. Yes, I was going to put up a graph, but I figured that would be going overboard. So what I'm going to share here, if you guys can see it, I'm sorry, I'm standing in front of it, is the route you're going to take for self-publishing. This is a little different than the traditional publishing route. And if you were doing the traditional publishing route, you would go from the first spot where you've decided to self-publish. Okay, and traditionally you would be going then to an agent and then to an editor and then through all the rest of these steps. But self-publishing, you decided to self-publish. That's cool, we're ready to go. The next step is you're going to learn how to edit your manuscript so that it is really, really, really ready to be published. I got to warn you, if you're just starting out, and I went through this, and this is why I want to share this experience, my first book was perfect. My mom said so. She said it was perfect. And she was an English teacher, and the English was great. The book sucked. It really, really did, but I didn't know it. And you won't know that about your first book. You'll think it's wonderful. It's like that first child, you know, it's a perfect child, even if it's really, really ugly. Okay, so just be aware of that because you want to get professional help for the editing, really seriously. After I have edited 20 books through traditional publishers and learned a lot of lessons, I feel comfortable editing my books. But I know I will find mistakes in them. And one of the cool parts about self-publishing is you can go back and fix the mistakes when you find them, if you're publishing ebooks, just to share that. All right, so here we are. We've decided to publish. We're going to go to the editing phase, get our manuscript all ready to go, get it just as perfect as we can. And then we go to the printing and distribution. That's the platform. That's what I'm here to talk about, is that platform. From there, you're going to go into a bookstore and then right to your happy readers. See the happy reader? I love that. Cool. I love those happy readers. So we're gonna talk about just this part that I've circled. That's the platform piece. But I'm happy to answer questions about the rest of this. And the other thing is, I really want this to be participatory. So those of you, and I know a lot of people out here have experience, I'm going to give you an opportunity to share some of that. And we're going to do some thumbs up and thumbs down on the different distributors and platforms, okay? So be ready. If you've done some of this already, be ready for a thumbs up or a thumbs down when we get to those specific ones, okay? All right, good. Just want to make sure you guys are awake. All right, cool.
Good morning. As you can see, I'm a literary giant. That's why these do me no good. I'll be holding this the whole time. It's nice to see you all this morning. I'm glad we got such a great turnout for this event. Most of you, or a lot of you, know me already or know who I am, but for you who don't, here's the bio. I was a newspaper man from the time I was 18 to the time I was 40. When I was around 30, I started playing around with fiction, and it became my life. It took over my life. Since then, I'm almost 60 now. So in the past 30 years, I've published 27 books, but as of last week, 28 books. And I'm going to talk to you a lot about this one today. 20 of those books are published by either New York houses or small publishers, so I've had a lot of experiences with those. And then 8 I've published myself, including this most recent one. And I've got 2 more books that are in the self-publishing pipeline right now. One will come out in December, one will come out next year. And since I recently fired my agent, that's 0 and 5, folks. 0 and 5 on agents. I've had 5, I've fired 5. I'll be self-publishing for this foreseeable future. And you know what? That's okay with me, because at least for now, because self-publishing has turned into this great thing. We are in the midst of a revolution. in publishing, and we're the pioneers. We can take full advantage of it. It's great. I call this talk, it isn't rocket surgery, because I really do want to emphasize how relatively easy self-publishing can be, and how even a Luddite like me, who has no slideshow, can do it. All right, look at me. I'm a large, clumsy man, prone to stumbling and talking to myself, which makes me perfect as an author. I spend a lot of time by myself, where I belong. I have had no formal training in computers, or formatting, or cover design, or marketing, or much of anything, really. I just know how to put words together, one after another. I majored in journalism, which taught me nothing about writing books. Taught me a lot about writing journalism, but there was a huge learning curve there. But I was always a big reader, like probably everyone in this room, and I loved crime novels of all kinds, detective stories and mysteries and things like that. And so when I got to be 30, I tried it. I tried to write a crime novel, and it was terrible. But it was fun to try to do it, and I didn't know it was terrible because I was new. And I sent it out to agents, and they sent it right back so fast it was like a boomerang. Sometimes it wouldn't even get out the door good; it was coming back in. So since that failed so wonderfully, I wrote a sequel with the same character. Guess what? That didn't sell either. And then I wrote a book that was set in New Mexico. I was in the process of moving back to New Mexico from California about then. And that one was good enough to land me an agent. This was in 1991, when it was a lot easier to get an agent because there was fewer of us competing for them. But he couldn't sell that book, and so it never got published either. And looking back, that's a good thing. Then the fourth book I tried to write was called Lonely Street, and it was about a private eye here in Albuquerque who's just not very good at it. He gets beat up a lot and tricked. He's gullible. He has a genetic gullibility. It runs in his family, and sort of the worst handicap you can have if you're a detective. And in his first book, Lonely Street, he gets hired by what appears to be the living Elvis. Now, this was long after Elvis was, just about 20 years after Elvis was dead, almost 20 years. And, but there were still all those people seeing him in laundromats and down at Furs and line, And so I took the two things. I took my not very good private eye. I said, well, what if he thought he was representing the king of rock and roll? And that's where this book took off. And of course, because of the Elvis connection, it sold to pocketbooks, and I was off and running as an author. And that was fine for as long as it lasted. But I have what is unfortunately a fairly typical publishing history in this country, which means that I've been orphaned at one house after another, again and again. It's the saddest thing. I published 2 books in Pocket, and then my editor was fired. And I don't think it was my fault, but I knew I didn't have an editor there anymore, so I was orphaned. And then I moved to St. Martin's, and they published 3 of my books, and they did equally badly. And so I was they didn't fire that editor. In fact, she's still there, but they fired me. And then I published a bunch of stuff at smaller houses because I'm too stubborn to stop. I just like it so much, and I think I'm telling good stories for people. And the fact that so few people read them is just my cross to bear.
Thank you, Rob. Good afternoon. You've been harangued a little bit this morning about the necessity for getting your manuscript perfect, so I'm going to harangue you some more. But first, I will expand a little bit on what Rob told you about me. As he mentioned, I started a poetry magazine called Blackberry back in the the mid-70s, and I learned some interesting information, some interesting things about looking for typos and missing typos. One of the first issues that came out, well, the procedure was I would type up the poems that I had accepted for publication. I'd send them to the publisher who was in California, and he would print the magazine and send the copies back to me. And one of the early issues, there was a glaring typo. It was either the word window that turned into the word widow, or it was vice versa. Widow became window, or vice versa. And I had looked at that 1,000 times and never saw it. So I, in the next issue, I reprinted that poem with an apology for our errors. So that was a good lesson about looking for typos and not being able to see them. But to talk about what we want to talk about today, I know that you've worked for what seems like absolutely ages on your manuscript. You've had it critiqued more than once, you've revised it, maybe you've employed a line editor, a general editor, to examine the content and the writing style. And you've revised it again, and maybe again. And now you're getting so sick and tired of the whole process, you just want to see your words in print, and you say, let's just get this show on the road. And your impulse will be just to send it to press and be done with it. But wait a minute, is it really ready for prime time? Now you think that surely all those content editors, who are also known as concept editors, line editors, and numerous other titles, those people have found everything that should be corrected. And if they haven't, if there are some minor errors, who's going to care? Well, someone will notice and care. Someone will notice and care. Someone to whom finding mistakes in grammar, spelling, and punctuation and other small stuff is painful. And just as we were having lunch, I was having a conversation with the people at my table about this very thing, about picking up a book and finding it full of grammatical errors and it being really turned off. So it really does happen. Kathleen Parker, for instance, whose article about the subject of the small stuff appeared recently in the Albuquerque Journal, did use the word painful in describing this kind of these kinds of errors and what the reaction they cause in the reader. And I'm one of those people who were turned off by those kinds of errors. People who know me might say that I'm addicted to buying books about plants, trees, flowers, weeds, herbs. Weeds are just wildflowers with a bad reputation. Any book about vegetable nature, I want to own it. And at a local bookstore, I came across a book of that type, and I was all set to buy it. The beautiful cover, beautiful layout. I was just sure I was going to walk out of the store with this book, and then I saw a glaring grammatical error, and I don't remember anymore what it was, but it was jarring. And I decided it would be painful to have that book on my shelf. Kathleen Parker quoted Amanda Sturgill, Associate Professor of Communications at Elon University in North Carolina. Grammar is credibility. If you're not taking care of the small things, people assume you're not taking care of the big things. The critiquers and the line editors, the editors who look at content, usually don't look closely at the small stuff, as I mentioned. They don't necessarily look closely at grammar, punctuation, spelling, and the like, because it's not their job, for one thing. And they don't worry about the format, because that's not their job either. Taking care of the small stuff is your responsibility, and sending the manuscript to the book designer in the appropriate format is up to you as well. So, What should you do? What should you do? You should edit, proofread, use software features and maybe editing programs, and employ a copy editor. So we'll look at these one by one.
Well, today, some of the things I want to say to you will be totally obvious to you, and other things might not be, and things might be confusing. So if you have questions, make a note for yourself, and I'll try to leave some time to ask questions at the end, because there's an enormous amount to say. Being a graphic designer, in essence, for 60 years, I have a lot of opinions, and I have a lot to say, and I'm a know-it-all, and so I'll try to keep what I'm telling you to the main points. I've given you some handouts. I think everybody has a handout. There's my contact information on it, and the main points, so that if you want to design your own cover, here's some things to think about. And if you want somebody else to design your cover, you still need to be aware of these things. So, book covers, they are important. For one thing, that's sometimes the only place you get to use color. So, there's all kinds of fun things about it. And one of the things about art, about design, is that everybody sees things differently. So that's to be expected, and not everybody's going to agree on what's good and what's not good. But if you're the author and you got the final say-so, it should please you. And so you don't have to agree with me. I was in a course recently, and the first thing that the guy who wrote and led the course said was, what's the difference between you learning something because somebody is teaching you and you learning it for yourself? And in all my years of education, nobody had ever asked me that. And I said, well, that's interesting. So I find that for myself, if I'm learning it for myself because I want to and I'm interested, I retain it better. It's easy. It's not being forced on me. So I invite you to get whatever you get out of what I have to say for yourself, because you'll all be listening from different places, different amounts of experience, and you're looking for different things depending on what you see yourself doing in the future. So I broke this up into 4 elements of what makes a good book cover. The first element in a book cover is, what's the purpose of a cover? And obviously, one of the first things is it protects the contents from withstanding wear, putting it on the shelf, or whatever. So, you're familiar with different kinds of covers. Soft covers, hard covers, dust jackets on hard covers, and even slip cases. Soft cover is what you do a lot. This is a stapled book. The cover is a little bit thicker paper. And actually, this is a Poetry Quarterly. They've actually used different kinds of paper in the inside, so that it's interesting texturally as well as textually. And I liked it for Minneapolis. Another soft cover is just the same paper that the whole book's published on. This was done for a guy's funeral, and the guy had written some poetry, and the family wanted copies of the poetry. So they gave me a photograph that he had taken, which was like god-awful, boring. And they gave me his poems. And so I had it printed locally, saddle-stitched it with string, thread. They wanted the family picture in the middle. They wanted his picture in it. His picture. Somewhere in here. Put the family picture or the gathering. This was done after the funeral, so this was the family gathering of dinner after the funeral. That's the book. So the cover photograph, I photoshopped it and made it all kinds of zappy, wiggly things in there because, you know, it fit. It was appropriate. This is a soft cover book. Another, somebody's poems. The soft cover, they made it bigger than the text block. I don't know if you can see that. Which makes it fragile. That 1/4 inch hanging over is just breaking. It's just looking awful. So in general, the soft cover is not going to extend over the text block. If you have a hard cover, it does extend over the text block, but soft cover, that's a no-no. Dust jackets, for a long time, that was the only way to get color on the cover. If you had a hardbound book, hardbound books were pretty boring just by the book, so they put a dust jacket on. This is a 1897 dust jacket. This is the original dust jacket. And they really fancied it up by gold embossing this book with fake marble paper inside. This is one of my father's educational books. And if you really, 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 really want to protect your book, you make a box for it. Because the book looks, this is as close as they could get to a reproduction of a 15th century book of hours done in modern technology. So it's a, you know, fancy reproduction. And then it has a slipcase, which also has all the decoration on it. So those are just some of the physical things about a cover.
Okay, great. So let's go ahead and get started so we can all get out of here at a decent hour, enjoy a little bit more sunshine for today. Just a couple of quick housekeeping notes. I passed around a sheet, and you should see it on your table, and it's a sign-up sheet so that you can get a recording of today's talk. I'm going to record it right here on my little digital recorder. So let me turn that on.
So do you know where the sheet is?
Yes, there should be one on your table. If there isn't, then there's 8 or 9 sheets, so just check the table next to you. If you're at a table that has one and you see that they're passing it out, please pass one to. You might not have got one since you're at a smaller table. Sorry, but they have one at that table. Okay. Anyway, so you'll get a recording of today's talk, and then also I'm going to be talking about a 7-step guerrilla marketing plan for writers, which is really cool. It's something that you can do in about 30 minutes to an hour, and I'm going to talk about it a little bit today, but we won't actually have time to do it. So I'll also send that to you as well, along with a recording of the of today's talk. So there you go. Also, there's some books on the back table, and if you are interested in any of the books, just see me afterwards. I have one of those little, I take cash, of course, yes, American money. Actually, if you know how to translate, or what's that called when you have currency exchange? Yeah, if you know the exchange rates, I'll take Canadian, I'll take British pounds, you know, whatever. But I also have one of those little dingy things square things, yeah, that you put on your phone. Yeah, I actually tried it out today and it works. Yeah, I charged myself $5. Anyway, okay, so my name is Lawrence Clark, and we're going to be talking today about guerrilla marketing for self-publishers, and that means self-published authors and anybody who wants to create their own books. All of the material that we're going to talk about today is also applicable if you are published with what we call a traditional publishing house, because most of the traditional publishing houses now require all their authors to do most or not all of their marketing. Right? So I wanted to ask, first of all, how many people in here have already published a book of some sort, self-published or otherwise? Okay, great. How many people have a manuscript, or you're really close and you're wanting to publish one really soon? Okay, awesome. Okay. And then the other question I have is, raise your hand if you specialize mostly in either fiction or poetry, kind of literary type genres. Okay, and how many of you write more how-to books or business-oriented books, anything like that? Okay, all right, good. It's always good to know your audience, know who your audience is before you write, and also before you speak in public, right? As we could tell from the jokes at the Catholic charity dinner the other night. We won't get into that. But always know who your audience is. Alrighty, so let's go ahead and get started here. We're going to have a little pop quiz, and what I'd like you to do in this part of the presentation, feel free to just shout out if you know the answer to who this is. Ready? Go. All right. Okay. Okay.
United.
Jolly Green Giant. There we go. Charlie. That's right. Now, what I want to ask now is, what do all of these characters have in common?
Immediate recognition.
Okay,
They're
and
animals. They're not real.
you're going to see. They were all developed by this one man and his creative teams. J. Conrad Levinson, and he was a vice president and marketing director at many different ad agencies in New York and London and Chicago. And he is now known as a marketing psychology guru, and he's the author of the best-selling book, Guerrilla Marketing. Now, here's our pop quiz number 2. Ready, go. Who's that?
I know who that is.
It's Michael Dell, right? Okay, next. Bet you never seen that picture of Louis before. Okay. Next.
Jobs.
Okay, Steve Jobs, right? And what do all these guys have in common?
Computers.
Yes, they were all from the computer industry, that's true. And they're all very successful while they were, the ones that are still alive, yes. Okay, next. Okay, they all learned how to market their products from Jay Levinson. Okay, so he was helping them. He says when they were just young jeans-wearing ponytail guys in school trying to market their products, and they had no money, but they had great ideas, right? Does that sound familiar? Okay. So here we have a room full of people with great ideas. Some of us have some money, right? Okay, but we don't have tons and tons of money to invest in our books and in our marketing. So